So the controversy around Cuties started as soon as this movie poster was released, for people being outraged that 11-year-old girls were portrayed in a highly sexualized manner. And Netflix came back and they were like, our bad. We misjudged the situation. We shouldn't have released a movie poster like that. But the movie itself, the movie is really good. It's been at Sundance. It's won these awards, blah, blah, blah. They tried to completely disassociate the movie itself from this movie poster. And I'm going to be honest, when I saw this movie poster, I was like, I don't know about this. This doesn't really seem appropriate. But it really wasn't. To be honest, guys, it really wasn't something I cared a whole awful lot about. Like, you guys were screaming about it and making a fuss, and I certainly understand why, but I was like, well, we don't really know what the movie is, and sometimes movie posters are different than the movies themselves. I didn't like the look of it, and it certainly didn't seem to be the type of movie I would ever watch, but, you know, these things happen sometimes when people in marketing get a little overzealous. I kind of understood that. And then the movie came out. Last week, it finally was released, and oh my god, it seemed as though the movie was actually pretty well represented by the movie poster. And you guys, if you're on Twitter, you heard about basically nothing else on September 9th other than how bad this movie was. And Tulsi Gabbard even got involved, tweeting out, Netflix child porn Cuties will certainly whet the appetite of pedophiles and help fuel the child sex trafficking trade. 1 in 4 victims of trafficking are children. It happened to my friend's 13-year-old daughter. Netflix, you are now complicit. Cancel Netflix. And of course, there's estimates that Netflix has lost something like $9 billion since releasing Cuties, with everyone canceling their accounts and the hit that they've taken and all that. Now, I gotta be honest. As soon as I read about some of the things that were actually in this movie, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this movie. I think it sounds really, really bad. It sounds really inappropriate. But Joshua actually convinced me. Joshua, you guys know Joshua. He's actually my coach, and we do a show on my channel every Tuesday night at 9:30 where we kind of banter and do psychic stuff and all that stuff, and it's fun. But Joshua had actually convinced me. He was like, Carlin, like, I'm going to watch the movie. I want to see what it's like for myself. And he was like, you know, girls learn, like, with girls that are put into dancing programs with the goals of being professional dancers, they learn sexy dances when they're younger. It's just part of learning how to do it and developing that muscle memory and all that good stuff. So, I mean, he kind of convinced me that maybe the movie isn't as bad as people are making it seem, and if it's just a matter of girls doing sexy dances, then I could kind of understand that. I listen, I was obsessed with Dance Moms, so I understand training kids who want to learn how to dance, how to do certain moves, so they develop the muscle memory and they do it over time, and kids who want to be professional dancers, they have to start at a very young age, and it's just part of what it is, or their parents push them to start it, or whatever the heck. So I decided to watch it. I watched it the other night while Victor and I were traveling up to Maine. I was speaking at a Trump rally in Maine, and we kind of had the night before in an Airbnb to relax, and I decided, let's watch this controversial movie. And Victor, to his credit, was like, I don't really want to. And I was like, well, I want to, and I feel like I'm like obligated to watch it. So Victor kind of like went on his iPad and did his own thing. I turned on this movie, and I have to tell you, again, this is not the type of movie I would ever watch if left to my own devices. I think that this movie is highly inappropriate for this movie to have been made in the first place. That by itself is highly inappropriate. However, I also want to take a more nuanced perspective of this movie, because something that came out with all the controversy was people saying this is a film arguing against the sexualization of children. That is the point of the movie. That is what it is arguing for. If you think this is a movie promoting the sexualization of children, you have missed the point. Now, as with almost everything in the world, and some of you are not going to like that I say this, but as with almost everything in the world, there are two sides to this. And I can see both sides pretty clearly. I can. And I think that that is actually one of the saddest things about this movie, because if you focus in on just this microcosm, this small little microcosm of this movie, you're missing the bigger picture. You're missing why this is important, because it is not just about this movie. It is not just about the actresses in this movie. This is about a bigger picture of frankly, the reality of the people who are in charge of making these types of movies, their perspective being completely skewed about what is and is not acceptable. So I sent out this thread of tweets which kind of summarizes my perspective on the topic, and I just want to go through it to add a little bit more nuance to what I said. I started off with saying, okay, so here's the thing about Cuties. I can absolutely understand how they, and by they mean I think the people who made this movie, the supporters of this movie, I can absolutely understand how they can argue that the point was to comment on the dangers of sexualizing children. I get it. There are parts of it that are really, really bad, and other parts that try to balance it out. And I stand by that point. I absolutely understand the point that the makers of the film were trying to make with this movie, because nothing good comes out of the sexualization of the girls in this movie. There is no positive outcome. There is no positive reinforcement of it, ultimately, if you get through the whole movie. And there are parts of it which contrast the highly sexualized dancing and behaviors of the girls with other much more innocent parts. And it actually makes the innocent parts look much more appealing. It really does. And so I stand by that. I can absolutely understand how an individual could watch this movie and think that this was an appropriate commentary on a topic. However, that does not mean that I think that it was appropriate to make this movie. Let's keep going. But that's not good enough. I also really believe that people involved in the making and marketing of this film don't know that this film glorifies the sexualization of children. I truly believe that they don't know it was wrong to make this. And that's the scariest part. Now, this is a highly nuanced point. Just because something might be obvious to you does not mean that it is obvious to everyone. And in this respect, I really think me having had Trump derangement syndrome at some point in my life, and I believe I definitely had it for a good 2 to 3 years, when I had Trump derangement syndrome, I literally couldn't see things. They're right in front of my face. I literally could not see them. My brain was not processing that information. It was not processing it in a way that I was consciously aware of it. It may have been in there, but I had no idea. And again, this was stuff that was happening literally right in front of my face. Now, apply this to people whose job it is to make movies and market movies that are probably inundated by highly sexualized material at all times. Their threshold for what is and is not appropriate is going to be very, very high. I mean, probably inappropriately high if they cannot see that sexualizing 11-year-olds is not appropriate. But I do absolutely believe, and I think this is probably true for the majority of people who made this movie, I do absolutely believe that they made this movie believing emphatically on a conscious level that they were making a comment on the danger of sexualizing children. I absolutely believe that was the core belief that they had in their head. Okay? I absolutely believe that that's true. Now, that doesn't make it okay. And that is actually the scariest part of this entire affair. That is the scariest thing that could happen, because this means that no one on this movie questioned whether or not this was a good idea. No one in this movie questioned whether or not they should be putting these children, these were 11-year-old girls, in these roles. Now, forget the audiences. Put the audiences aside for a second. I believe that this movie was inappropriate to make because it required 11-year-old girls to play these roles. Put everything else aside. That's too much for me. Playing these roles and doing some of the things that these girls did in this film, especially in the lead role, that is going to be psychologically damaging to them in ways that they probably don't even understand. I guarantee you, these kids did not know or did not have the presence of mind to know what they were doing, but that doesn't mean that they won't internalize that, and their parents never should have let this happen. Never, ever, ever. I mean, my God, that is the very definition of child abuse as far as I'm concerned. Let's keep going. This is the logical outcome of what's going on in culture. People can look at 4 very young girls playing highly sexualized roles and follow this project from conception to completion and see nothing wrong with it or even question if it was a good idea. That's the bigger picture. It's not about one movie. It's not about one movie. It's about this is a problem with the industry. This is a problem with our culture. I think that they clearly probably did this for some shock value because they thought, oh, if we shock everyone with the content in this movie, and some of it is shocking, and it has nothing to do with the dancing. The dancing is the least problematic thing in this movie. There are many other things that are much more problematic than the dancing. And this movie was allowed to go from conception to completion without anyone saying, maybe this isn't a good idea. In fact, I'm sure they thought it was great. They were like, we're going to rake in the cash when we have this shocking movie that everyone's going to want to watch because it's so shocking. That is the problem. That's the problem. I end with Cuties is a sad movie. It's sad for what you watch on the screen, and it's even sadder that it was ever made in the first place. And I stand by that statement. I really do. I felt sad watching this movie. This was not a movie I enjoyed watching. It's not a movie I would ever watch again. It was sad on so many levels for me. It was sad to watch the content and how it played out. It was sad to know that I'm sure it mirrors things that happen in real life. I mean, this wasn't created out of nowhere. And that's very sad to me. It was sad that 4 young girls played these roles. It was sad to me that they had parents that allowed them to play these roles. It was sad to me that there were hundreds of girls auditioned for these roles and no one saw a problem with it. It was sad to me that no one apparently thought about the long-term impact on kids playing roles like this. I don't know the processes for people that are actors, whether they're young actors or older, but I have to imagine that they have to, in order to be a good actor, you probably have to really internalize the role to a very deep degree, and I'm sure that's true whether you're young or old. That makes me very sad. It's just, like, the whole thing is just depressing. It really is. So I don't think that this is a movie that ever should have been made. I'm glad I watched it for myself. I'm glad I didn't snap to judgment, because you'll see there's an epilogue here on this series of tweets, because basically I sent out that 4 series of tweets, and then the next morning I woke up and I had all these massive amounts of replies to where people are saying, Carlin, this is child porn, this is pedophilia. Like, be better, folks. Be better. I wrote, Epilogue, you all really should read what you're commenting on before you start screaming and flailing. Because I had people that were like, Carlin, this movie never should have been made. Why are you defending it? Like, I'm literally not defending it. I'm saying it's a really sad movie. I'm especially annoyed at that, or I've especially enjoyed the responses where you say I'm wrong, but then do more to show that you didn't read. Be better. Life is nuanced. I don't think it does any good to say that this movie is child porn, because it's not. It's not. Full stop. It is not child porn. It's not. And I know it might seem that way if you're just reading excerpts on the internet, and that doesn't mean I don't think it's problematic. That doesn't mean I don't agree wholeheartedly with what Tulsi Gabbard wrote. I absolutely believe that pedophiles are going to love this movie, but that doesn't actually mean it's child porn, okay? Like, saying this movie is child porn diminishes what child porn is and how much more harmful that is to the people who are forced into it than what this was for the actors in this movie. I'm sorry, like, that's just how I feel about it. But that doesn't mean it's not problematic, and it doesn't mean I believe that movie should have been made. I think that movie should have been stopped. Someone should have said, we're requiring 11-year-old girls to play these roles, and playing a role like this could potentially have long-term impacts on their mental health. And that's ultimately one of the primary reasons I don't think this movie should have been made, because you should not be putting actors at the state. Listen, when you're young, like, their brain is still in a very active state of development. They're kids. Their brain is not fully formed, and the long-term ramifications that these kids are going to have as their brain fully develops with this now a part of their experience. Their parents should lose these kids. I'm sorry. Like, no parent should be able to put a child in a role like this and still have responsibility for raising them. That's how I feel. So that's my big thing with Cuties. Again, I know that a lot of you are canceling your Netflix accounts. I don't think you should be commenting on something that you haven't watched. See for yourself. I mean, listen, guys, like, commenting on Cuties when you haven't watched it is exactly like the left commenting on what a Trump rally is like when they haven't been to it. Okay? That's what we're talking about. You should watch what you're doing, watch what you're commenting on for yourself. Draw your own conclusions. Don't allow people on the internet just posting a bullet list of their points of grievances sway your opinion of it. Watch it for yourself. If it's really that bad, you can still hold that opinion. But it is really much more nuanced than a lot of people are making it seem, and I think it's very important that we have a nuanced discussion about it. Again, I can see both sides. I can see why the perception exists on both sides. I am coming down on the side of this movie should not have been made in the first place. All right, that's all I've got for this one. If you enjoyed this content, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel, sharing it out, giving it a thumbs up, all that good stuff. Even, guys, if you're giving it a thumbs up, you're giving a thumbs up for my video, not for Cuties, okay? This is not a reflection of Cuties. This is a reflection of if you enjoyed my analysis of it, so relax. That's all I've got for right now. I'll see you soon.